There are times, not often in human history, when the urge to build conspires with a vision of beauty. When the will to achieve conspires with the skill to create. What is born is that rare thing, a work of wonder. A work that gives pause, that catches the breath, that seems to cry out, behold what we can accomplish. These are the enduring works of man's own creation, lasting testaments of an eternal struggle to leave a mark on a fleeting world.
All during the trip they were talking about, we are going to meet a beautiful lady with a lamp. Like, I couldn't visualize it.
When I saw it, I said, Mother, Mother, come here, come here. This is the liberty. That torch up there, it says welcome.
Finally we came to the promised land, you know, to the Statue of Liberty. Beautiful, beautiful woman.
I said to Mother, what does she mean? Mother just hugged me and said, that means America.
She rises out of the waters of New York Harbor, a modern-day colossus of metal, the largest ever forged. To this day, the most enduring symbol of America's best hopes for itself. But like the millions of new Americans who have passed beneath her, the story of the Statue of Liberty began across the sea in a troubled land. The year was 1865. In Paris, the harsh and war-torn rule of Emperor Napoleon III had turned the democratic dream of the French Revolution into a dim memory. To some French liberals, America was the true torchbearer of France's lost democratic ideals. They longed for the fraternity that once linked Washington and Lafayette. Among them was a sculptor, Frédéric Bartholdi, who set about designing a monumental gift to the young nation.
I will try to glorify the Republic and liberty over there, in the hope that someday I will find it here again.
He wanted his gift to be the first thing visitors saw when entering the New World, so he chose Bedloe's Island as a suitable site. If Americans would pay for a pedestal, he assured himself that France would finance a massive statue. Bartholdi tended to think big. His earlier works were bombastic and patriotic, but they shrank next to his new project, which would take him 15 years. He dubbed it Liberty Enlightening the World. Casting the statue was Bartholdi's greatest accomplishment. In France, he started making terracotta and bronze models in increasing sizes. Wooden frames were built to match, and then plaster was laid on top. In his Paris workshop, metalsmiths carefully hammered huge plates of Norwegian copper, each as thick as a $50, to conform to the plaster mold. Every feature of the statue, from her coiffure to the folds of her dress, was hand-hammered into place. The original color, a dark brown like an old penny, would gradually weather into a soft gray-green patina in the salt air of the Atlantic. The massive statue would also need to withstand winds whipping up to 125 miles per hour without toppling into the sea. Bartholdi turned to France's most brilliant structural engineer, Gustave Eiffel, to design an ingenious support system of 1,800 braces, including a main skeleton and an outer series of struts that would allow the copper plates to expand and contract with the weather without cracking. Eiffel's support scaffold itself was the tallest iron structure of its day, pushing the gargantuan lady above the rooftops of Paris for all to see. But while Paris gawked, America balked. Contributions were slow, well short of the $250,000 needed for the pedestal. Bartholdi took the giant torch on fundraising tours of the United States, where visitors were invited to climb aboard. Eventually, the newspaper publisher, Joseph Pulitzer, harangued the citizens of New York into supporting the pedestal. Itself a masterpiece of understatement, it was designed by Richard Morris Hunt to harmonize with the statue rather than compete with it, while bearing the weight of more than 225 tons of iron and copper. By 1885, France had contributed more than $400,000 to the project, and Bartholdi had worked 14 years. The completed statue was disassembled and sent off to its new home packed in more than 200 crates, 39 just for rivets. When the statue had been reassembled a year later in New York, Americans saw for the first time what would become a symbol of hope for a wave of newcomers in the decades to come. The finished statue was 15 stories high, with an index finger alone stretching 8 feet. Liberty's symbolism is clear. A tablet inscribed July 4th, 1776. Below her feet are the broken shackles of enslavement. Her crown of 7 points reaches out to the 7 continents and to the 7 seas, and she holds aloft the beacon of liberty to the world. Bartholdi actually wanted it to be lit from within, and in the 20th century, a weak electric light filtered through holes punched in the torch. The original now stands safely in a nearby museum. Recent refurbishing added a new torch with 24-karat gold leaf to enhance the illusion of illumination. Those who passed under the shadow of the torch came in search of a better living, in flight from an army, to join a relative, to flee a persecutor. They came with rumors of gold in the streets. They came with rags. Ironically, their first hours in the land of freedom were usually spent confined on Ellis Island. Immigrants named it the Island of Tears. Here, in the shadow of the Statue of Liberty, some 16 million hopeful souls poured into the Great Hall to await their fate. Some of them, deemed to be unfit, sick, or who just looked somehow mentally deficient, were turned back from the threshold of America and returned in the ships on which they had come. But most of them were admitted into the new land, sometimes with new names, always with renewed hope. As ferries took them into the metropolis of New York, they left behind the colossus with the torch. The poet, Emma Lazarus, daughter of Russian Jewish immigrants, gave to the statue a purpose that Bartholdi hadn't imagined. Her words are now emblazoned on Liberty's doorstep.
Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.
In the heart of America, another man's daring dream came to life on the face of a granite mountain. In the Black Hills of South Dakota, among cliffs that stand as testimonies to the sheer power and permanence of the land, one man set out to put his mark on a mountain. Not just a personal expression of his own artistry, but a monument to the founding principles of a democratic nation. Mount Rushmore began as the somewhat provincial dream of a little-known South Dakota historian named Doane Robinson. He imagined a Wild West theme carved somewhere in the sheer pinnacles of the Black Hills. But the artist he commissioned had a different vision altogether. Gutzon Borglum was the American-born son of Danish immigrants, an accomplished painter and sculptor who had studied with Auguste Rodin and had forged massive sculptures of historical figures such as Abraham Lincoln and Robert E. Lee. On this massive canvas, Borglum envisioned more than a tribute to the Wild West. He instead wanted to capture the enduring qualities of an entire democracy.
I want something in America. A few feet of stone that bears witness to the great things we accomplished as a nation.
Borglum reached deep into the American psyche to find the archetypes of national ideals. George Washington, who for Borglum was the very embodiment of democratic leadership, a reluctant hero of the Revolution, and the man who gave dignity to the cause of American freedom. Thomas Jefferson, philosopher-statesman, author of the Declaration of Independence, and profound defender of individual freedoms. Abraham Lincoln, who symbolized the strength of the American Union and the right of all citizens to be free. And Teddy Roosevelt, personifying the robust expansion of the nation with the commitment to preserve its natural resources and to promote entrepreneurial freedom. But how to shape a mountain into these four faces? First, Borglum and Robinson found a site with the right combination of surface expanse, structural integrity, and year-round sunlight. Borglum's work began in 1927 and would continue sporadically for 14 years, would involve more than 300 workers, and eventually would cost nearly $1 million. More than 450,000 tons of granite were blasted away to create the faces, which stretch 60 feet high. The mountain proved an unwieldy canvas. Unstable stone forced Borglum to dynamite his first draft, which depicted Washington and Jefferson in opposite places. Unfazed, Borglum started on a new Jefferson, avoiding dangerous fissures by tilting the head a little higher than the others. Beyond engineering, Borglum's success at Mount Rushmore was to achieve artistic beauty on such a vast scale. Borglum forged emotion out of rock. Here, a spike of granite in a hollowed-out pupil creates the glint of an eye. Borglum planned to carve all the figures to the waist, but died in 1941 before he could finish. His son, appropriately named Lincoln, completed the heads, but the outbreak of World War II put off any dedication ceremonies. Finally, 50 years after its completion, Mount Rushmore was officially dedicated in July 1991, putting the final seal on a monument that has come to symbolize the giant strivings of the human spirit. Gutzon Borglum.
We believe a nation's memorial should, like Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Roosevelt, have a serenity, a nobility, a power, carved high as close to heaven as we can, to show posterity what manner of men they were. then breathe a prayer that these records will endure until the wind and rain shall wear them away.
Borglum's creation seems like the last great vision of a bygone era, an age in which heroes were not only believed in, but had identifiable faces. An era when artists still took the entire human experience as their province and dared to make statements on a superhuman scale. And yet there is another great wonder of the world still in progress, even in our own impatient age. And it is happening only 17 miles from Borglum's masterpiece on Mount Rushmore. Here, a Polish-American orphan named Korczak Jułkowski began the most ambitious stone carving ever undertaken in the ancient or the modern world. A monument 60 stories high to the great Sioux Indian warrior, Crazy Horse. During the 1930s, as the stone faces of American presidents of European descent began to emerge from the South Dakota granite, Chief Standing Bear of the Sioux Nation was moved to ask Korczak a poignant question. Where were the monuments to his own people, to the heroes of a tribe who had populated the land for 400 centuries, but who had been all but annihilated in the space of 40 years? Korczak's answer was to devote the rest of his life to carving a modern-day colossus of Crazy Horse. The scale is almost incomprehensible. All 4 heads of Mount Rushmore would fit into the head of Crazy Horse alone. Korczak saw in this legendary warrior the heroic dignity of a defeated people. He set about his task with a perseverance worthy of his other hero and mentor, Gutzon Borglum. Eccentric and visionary, Korczak plowed thousands of his own dollars into the mining rights for this mountain. And in 1947, with less than $200 to his name, he began his Herculean task.
I am a storyteller in stone, but that's all I am. I want to tell the world that there was once a race of people that lived here that were remarkable. I didn't intend to make it this large, you know. I intended to make something 100 feet high. Gee, the 100-foot figure would look like nothing. And I said, I'll carve the whole mountain.
After 4 decades, some 8 million tons of rock have been blasted from the mountain. Korczak knew he would not live to see his work completed. When he died in 1982, he left complete plans for continuing the work on the monument, now being carried on by his widow Ruth and most of their 10 children.
I guess he taught them that there's no limit to what you can do, and whatever you want to do, if you believe it strongly enough and work hard enough and you're willing to pay the price, you can do anything you want to. You can be anything you want in this world.
Korczak summed up his own philosophy by quoting an old saying he had once heard.
When the legends die, the dreams end. And when the dreams end, there is no more greatness.
Crazy Horse waits for the next dreamer. In its shadows, a listener might hear the story of all human creations, as timeless as the wind off the mountains. A whisper of ancient heroes, the muse of ancient builders. It is a call to great vision and great striving, a call to leave a mark, to create a new wonder.